Hello, Mr. Miggs. You are up first, sir. How's it going? Where are you playing out of?
I'm playing out of Wind Creek, PA, and just Migs is fine.
Bethlehem, Wind Creek in Bethlehem, right?
Yes, used to be the old Sands a
Ah,
few years ago. Now,
Wind
yeah, Wind Creek.
Creek in PA. Now, from what I remember, Miggs, because I remember I've had this call like on sort of backup for a while. Preflop police, big time here, but sometimes we can get past that because it brings a certain point up, I believe, at the river. All right, so Wind Creek, PA, and what's the size of the game?
So this is a 2-5. Up until this day, I didn't know it at the time, but this is the first day with a new cap. It had been 1,000. Now it's 1,500 starting today.
Oh, wow. So
Yeah,
1,500 cap. And how deep are you?
I started with 1,000.
So 1,000 effective.
1,000 effective. Yes.
Okay. All right. Why don't you start us off here?
Sure. So I'm in the hijack.
Okay.
Um, I'm sorry. I'm 1,600. I had started with 1,000, but I had gotten up to 1,600 up until this hand.
Okay. So 1.6 effective. Okay.
1.6, yeah. So I have 9-5 of clubs, and off of the comment you made about the pre-flop police. Yeah, I normally wouldn't be considering, you know, playing this hand in this particular spot against most players, but it does kind of come into play, further down the hand as to why it did. So I am 1,100 effective versus the villain who is under the gun.
Okay. 1,100 effective.
He's effective,
Third
yes,
time's a
yes,
charm. Okay.
yes. He's under the gun, and a little quick backstory on the villain is he is what I call a young OMC. So he's about retirement age, 66, and he had been playing for maybe an hour up until then. Didn't really play many hands, typical of an OMC. Now, this particular hand was following a hand where I was talking to the dealer about the new cap, and the conversation, it seemed like the young OMC didn't seem to like this conversation too much. So it seemed like he got a little steamed and he just started calling out, let's play already, enough chit chat, which is unusual for an OMC. But I just thought I'd throw that in there because that's why I actually decided to play in this particular hand in this spot.
Okay. So tell us what happens here.
Sure. So villain opens to 15, which is a pretty typical opening. 50, I'd say 15 to 20 in this particular game.
So an OMC young guy, UTG, opens to 15, and you're going to play 9-5 suited. I hope you three bet it.
Yeah, he's a young OMC, about 66. I did not three bet it.
Okay.
So middle position calls, and I'm in the hijack. I call, button calls, and then the blinds fold out.
Okay. So definitely not nowhere near anything that would be, again, close to playable. But just to go back what you're saying though, like if an OMC opens here, why would you want to take? Here's the problem with your logic here, and sometimes it's kind of a simple thing, right? You're like, well, I can get him off the hand because he plays really really tight. The problem here though is that because you just flatted, now you've got two guys. You got two guys behind you, right? Or you said under the gun opens to 15, MP calls, you call in the hijack, and then the button calls. So you got a guy behind you and you got a guy in front of you. So that whole thing about like, oh, I'm going to play like any two against a tight guy in position. Well, that goes out the window because now it's multi-way.
I hear that.
So anyways, okay. So you're going to go for 1, 2, 3, 4 ways to the flop at $60. Okay.
Yeah. So the flop really determines how far I want to go, with this hand. So the flop comes out nine of diamonds, seven of hearts, five of diamonds.
So you flop top and bottom here.
Indeed.
Top and bottom on a textured board. The only time I could ever see having this hand would be, like I said, completing in the big blind, but okay.
hmm So at this point, I'm feeling really good about my hand because I'm only behind to three combos of sevens or four combos of 6-8 suited based on, what typical OMCs would play, but not out of this position. So I'm really putting him on obviously a big pair or ace king. at this point.
Okay.
Reasonable
Well,
logic?
I don't know what happened. Did he bet the flop?
Okay, so villain checks,
Okay.
middle position checks.
Okay.
Now I bet out. I bet out 50.
All right. So he gets checked to the hero and he bets 50 into 60. Okay.
All right, the button folds,
Okay.
the villain calls, and MP folds, so we're heads up.
All right. So, well, that gives me some more information. So you have a situation here on a ragged board where the under the gun who you sort of put as tight has check called, right? Which is a little bit strange because, well, it's not strange. It's just some people will check call based upon texture. Like they don't want to put money in with overpairs and they understand that this board hits the field callers more than them. So, yeah, I mean, when we think about what his range here probably is, it's probably some overpairs playing safe. I suppose he might have some like flush draws that don't bet off. I mean, he's not going to have like ace king of spades here or something like that. So, yeah, I mean, it's usually comprised of overpairs here, I would say, in this particular spot. Obviously, no problem with your bet. You basically bet, almost full pot. And now we're at 160. Okay.
Yeah. So now the turn comes Jack of clubs.
Okay.
All right. And villain checks again.
Okay.
Hero, I bet out 150 at this point.
All right. So you're betting again, like basically pot, right?
Yeah, pretty much.
I mean, I like it. I mean, here's the thing, right? I mean, again, we put him on a range, right? I mean, your 1100 effective. Somebody in the live chat said an OMC would check jam flop. I don't buy that. Remember, there were 4 people in the hand. So again, he's usually going to have either a flush draw or he's playing an overpair safe. So yeah, you want to get as much money in as possible. I think it really does lean towards a lot of overpairs here. And you bet close to pot, he's going to continue to call, and then you just hope for a brick, and you can just absolutely take him to Value Town. So you bet 150, and what does he do?
He calls.
Good.
Yeah.
So now,
Feeling really good about my hand.
absolutely, except if you get counterfeit. I mean, that's the only thing too about some. If you get counterfeit, it kind of sucks. Like if a 7 comes off or a jack comes off, and then it's interesting. I don't know what the river is here, but the other thing too is that you've got a bunch of one-liners that can come out that can kill the action, like a 6, an 8, or a 10. Although this brings up another point though too. Say, let's say the river is a 10 here. So it would be like 975, like Jack 10 or something like that. So there's like a one-liner to an 8. He doesn't really have that many 8s unless he had like, ace 8 of diamonds or something like that. When you think about like a range, I don't even know if he's calling. I mean, I guess an 8 here is an 8 is a 1-card double gutter here on the turn. I mean, I suppose he could have like pocket 8s or something like that. But the point is that if like the river's an offsuit 10 and he checks, I would bet again for sure with 2 pair and try to get looked up by an overpair.
For sure, yeah. I'm not really putting him on that range. Like I tend to put typical OMCs, regardless of young or old OMCs, in a certain range that usually doesn't include like an ace 8 suited or that ace 6 suited type of hand in that under the gun. I rarely see that.
Right.
But yeah, no, makes a lot of sense. Absolutely. So the river comes a deuce of diamonds. So the diamonds complete, but the board does not pair.
So it's 9 of diamonds, 7 of hearts, 5 of diamonds. Again, hero with 9-5, very speculative here in the hijack, flops top and bottom bets. And then the pre-flop raiser, who you say, this you teach you guys like an OMC, he check calls, turns a jack, he check calls again. And by the way, you're betting pot on flop and on turn. And now the river's a diamond here. And we talked about how maybe some of his range might be diamond draws, but also a lot of overpairs in spots like this. And again, like if he checks, I have absolutely no problem value betting here.
Yeah, absolutely. So now he's first to act, and now he snap shoves. Okay, snap shoves. I had it around 885 left in his stack, so he snap shoves on that river.
So he UTG shoves for 885.
Yeah.
I mean, so I've been doing this call-in show for 8 years now. Or yeah, almost 8 full years, right? We started in the beginning of 2017. What I'm going to say here is that sometimes callers will unintentionally represent or tag somebody as a certain type of player, whether it's a maniac or an OMC, when in fact the results end up being that they're actually not. Now, you have tagged this guy as like an OMC. So there's that. And if a true OMC were to take this line, it's a crazy bet at the end. It's a crazy bet at the end. By the way, didn't you say in the email that the river was a different diamond here, Migs? Wasn't it a one-liner to a straight?
No, no, it's a deuce.
Maybe
If I did, then I misswrote, but it was definitely a deuce.
Just through the powers of, let me look here. Okay, you told me in the email that the turn was the 10 of clubs. It probably doesn't change that much. Instead of the jack of clubs.
It definitely was a deuce of diamonds. Yeah.
But it was a deuce of diamonds on the river. So it's 5-9-7, whether it's the jack or the 10. And then the river is the deuce of diamonds. Okay, I thought that there was something a little bit. I had read this hand like a long time ago. So what I was going to say here is that when the OMC shoves here and we think that he's got overpairs or diamond draws, there's no OMC that's going to like bet here with like aces with the ace of diamonds here as a bluff. Why would he even need to turn anything into a bluff here? I mean, all he's done is just check called you twice. I mean, that's it, right? So if he truly was an OMC here, I would have a very difficult time calling down here for 2x pot size bet. What does he have here? I'm asking you, like, what would he have?
Well, what I thought he had. So I want to kind of go back to the reason why I played this hand with him, albeit a bad pre-flop move on my part. But I know that he was heated based on that conversation that he made. He hadn't talked for an hour, and then now all of a sudden, it's almost like he wants he wants action from me. For whatever reason, this OMC didn't play a hand. Now all of a sudden, I'm thinking that he whiffed with an ace king or an ace queen, and now he's just bombing. It's almost like reactionary, because I've seen a lot of people, regardless of what kind of player they are, in my experience, when they go this quickly, he's not even thinking about anything. He's not even, thinking about how to maximize. He just goes all in. So it seems like a bluff, like a missed ace king. That's what I'm putting him on.
So what do you mean by a missed ace king? Like ace king with the ace of diamonds?
Possibly. I really don't think that he connected with anything, and he was just hoping to catch an ace or king on subsequent rivers. And now that he absolutely has nothing, I think he thinks his only move is to do that. That's at least in the hand at that time. That's what I was thinking.
Well, I mean, the only thing I would, to just take exception with your thought, this is how I would think through it. On the flop, you bet 50, it's multi-way. He has a guy behind you. Now, have some guys like called with ace king with the ace of diamonds? It's 9-7-5. It's not like it's jack deuce 4 or something like that. That's a pretty optimistic call. And then to call 150 on the turn on a jack of clubs or a 10, like you said in the email, I guess a 10 is a little bit more textured with ace king with the ace of diamonds to set up a river bluff. It's just, listen, the part that I'll agree with you on is the fact that, yes, the sizing is definitely very, very strange. And the pacing with what you're saying is strange. But the rest of the kind of backstory and stuff doesn't necessarily add up whether or not he's an OMC or not. But the stuff that you say about the pacing and the sizing, like you'd think, why would he shove? Like he doesn't know how strong you are. You could just have like a 9 here and just think that you're trying to bet him off of ace king. Why would he shove for 885? But like I said, though, with the setup, if it was, when I take a look at this and if it was an actual OMC here, I would have a hard time. I really would have a hard time, making the call. What ended up happening here?
Mm-hmm. I tanked for maybe like a minute or two, and I finally ended up calling. And villain tables king jack of diamonds.
So he has a flush.
Yes. Yeah, he has a flush. He
He
got there on the turn, but he certainly got there on the river.
I mean, yeah. I mean, that doesn't really surprise me all that much, to be perfectly honest with you. The only other thing that I'll ask you here too, Migs, is like, let's say, for example, you had like, I don't know, ace 9 suited or something like that. Or say you had like 9-8, okay? 9-8 suited. So you bet the flop with a top pair and a gut shot. Turn, let's say you continue to bet. You pick up a 1-card double gutter. I'm not saying I would always bet, but let's say you did with 9-8, okay? And now the river's the deuce of diamonds, okay? And he jams for 885. Would you make that call with 9-8 of spades?
I'm thinking at that point, probably not,
Why
because in
not?
addition to well, just in case he has king king or ace ace, but I see what you mean, you know.
Well, I think the point is that like he is taking a very polarizing line here. Basically, he's representing a flush or a bluff. Okay. I don't think he's turning any of those 1-pair hands into bluffs the way that this went down. So the fact you making this call with 9-5 should be the same as 9-8. Like there's something amiss if you're going to call here with 9-5, but not call with 9-8. And a lot of people look at that and they look at their hand and they're like, well, I'm not going to call with 9-8 1-pair, but I'll call with 2-pair. But when in reality, there's actually no difference, I think, based upon the way that this hand went down.
Yeah, that makes sense.
Yeah. So that's what I would ask yourself. Would I have called here with like 1-pair? But I thank you very much for the call. I appreciate it.